Hello, and welcome to another review video. This time around, I'll be taking a quick look at the Pad Island rerun. There are 42 units in this REM, and 2 machines you can roll in. One machine is 1 magic stone more expensive and excludes the 5 and 6 stars. There are a few decent units, but decent might be stretching it. That's usually the case for seasonals, and this one is no exception. Is this machine worth it? Not unless you really want to roll for pastels. All of the other decent units are exchangeable, so if you have enough fodder, you hopefully can skip the REM and just make a few trades. Since there are so many lackluster units, I'll be skipping most of them and only say a few things about the ones that I think are okay. But first, the black metal exchanges. Thor has a 3 cooldown active skill to deal with absorptions. 3 turns was very low back in the day, but nowadays, this cooldown is the norm for active skills of this kind. His equip does provide a bunch of OEs and 2 team HPs, so it's not the worst, but I would still say by metals. Now as for Gainot, he's the new exchange that might be a little bit more worthwhile. They do a good amount of damage, and their active skill generates rainbow boards and deals with absorptions. Halving your move time is a pretty big cost though, and you probably won't be needing the absorption point effects every turn if you decide to system 2 copies. The grind for this black metal unit is similar to Halloween Lintia and New Year Norris, so get ready for a lot of farming if you want Beach Gainot. Rainbow has a bunch of 2-turn board makers, but Gainot is pretty unique so far. It might not be a bad idea to get at least 2 copies, but personally, I might save myself the grind and skip this unit. Now as for the REM units, I'm not going to touch on the 4, 5, 6, and most of the 7 and 8 star rarities, since I don't see much value in them. All of these units are at the very least trade fodder for the 2 new 10 stars. Maybe one of these units or their equips will be useful here and there, so don't trade away all of your units in case you ever need a copy for some unique scenario. The most notable unit that I'm skipping is maybe Metatron. She can deal okay damage, but she only handles 5 turns of binds and unmatchable recovery, and that won't be enough for most dungeons. I think there are better events going on at the moment or within the next 2 months, so I'm not focusing too much into Pad Island because this machine is an easy skip. You'll get much more value rolling in Code Geass or in future REMs. Okay, now onto the units. Leyland, Karen, and Haku are meant to synergize with each other or with other God-type units. The transforming base forms all have the same damage multiplier and are 3 attribute match and TPA based. Some of these units cover important roles, but you might have better options. Options that are non-transforming and could at least use a haste or a delay at the start of a dungeon. The Evos do less damage, but they can at least get a double damage cap latent, which they probably won't reach in super gravity dungeons, but I guess at least they have the potential, as the transforming versions don't even raise their damage cap. Ultimately, none of these really stand out, and same goes for their equips. Maybe the add God type awakening will be useful in the future, like the healer one in SN3, but for now, all of these units don't have much use. Echidna, Alrune, and Archangel are the other trio, but have more uses as units and equips when compared to the beats. For example, Alrune could be a decent cleric if you need all of those team HPs, and the other hard units at least offer some effective skill boost on transformation, even though their post-transformation active skill might not be that useful. These units' evos are also better than the beats. Echidna has some utility and could play an important role as an absorption voider. Archangel's 80% shield is useful in SN3 and has up to 3 full resist. All of their equips might have pretty bad active skills, but at least they all have the healer type awakening that could add a lot of bulk in your SN3 teams. My favorite is Echidna's 7C plus equip, since it gives 2 skill bind resist and a team HP, but do be wary about the low cooldown of these, as it might be really easy to overcharge. Mariel and Veroah are exchangeable for 7-star GFEs, but I would pass on these exchanges. Mariel has 3 different evos, and the one that's usually used the most is the light one, but I don't think she's all that good right now, since we have seen a multitude of short cooldown absorption voiders that either provide more utility or deal more damage. Veroah is only good if you don't have better units with at least 3 dungeon boost awakenings. You might have better options, especially someone like Kanagon, who has 5 skill boosts with the SB++ latent. Also, Hello Kitty is around the corner, so if you want units with 3 or more dungeon boosts, I would rather wait until that collab, since these Hello Kitty units take 6-star GFEs instead of 7 stars as straight fodder. Veroah's Evo could deal decent damage, but her active skill doesn't offer much. That way of creating orbs is too unreliable for my liking. The Beats and Hearts trios are the BGM and Orbskin Girl Band bundles. Both have similar active skills that give a time buff, a team-wide cap break to 6 billion, and a special roulette. Unfortunately, the roulette and cap break only last for 1 turn. It would have been much better if these were looping effects, but even then, these units lack damage and utility awakenings. Hearts is a bit better, but that's not saying much. The only highlight of these units are their leader swap equips, since they at least offer a skillbind resist, a skill boost, and some OE awakenings. The Hearts equip obviously would work great for SN3 since it grants healer type as well, but even then, every meta team at the moment consists of transforming units which cannot use these equips. So unless you have a clear idea on where to use these units and equips, I would easily skip both of these bundles. Elaine is a Pierce unit and therefore won't have much use, especially for blue teams as these tend to focus on matching boxes to Pierce. At the moment, the blue TPA archetype doesn't exactly have a leader. With the future GFE Steed, Elaine could fit in as a sub, but this unit doesn't hit that hard and Steed themselves has a Pierce active skill. The only upside to getting this unit at the moment is their equip, as it is the first one with 2 skill boosts and 3 team HP awakenings. The active skill could have been better, especially since there are other 3 team HP equips with more effective skill boosts. Fujin's first 3 forms are a bit useless, but their active skills might come in handy for a specific farming or co-op team. The main highlight is their second equip, which I don't think is that bad for the price of 4 6-star GFEs. If you don't have a copy of her, I would highly encourage you to get one. Planar is a decent cleric option that can also handle 2 turns of damage absorption, but obviously the lack of heal TPAs sucks. Still, the active skill could help free up a slot if attribute absorption is not needed or if it's covered elsewhere. Her blue equips aren't too impressive, but the mix of team HP and heal OE is nice. Fire Planar doesn't really have a home at the moment, not only because she's a piercer, but also because 5-match fire and dark teams haven't been a thing since Kamen Rider Wizard. Her light Evo might see some use in light teams since her active skill helps tank SN3's big hits. If you don't have a copy of Planar already, I do think she's worth taking a look at. There aren't that many places where you can use her blue and light evos, but they do bring some unique stuff to the table. Be careful exchanging away 7-star GFEs, since there are a bunch of exchanges coming up in Monster Hunter that I think are of higher priority. I talked a bit more about these at the end of my Code Geass review, but in short, you might want to exchange for dupes of these 3 Monster Hunter units, so maybe save your fodder for those exchanges. Dorna is an attribute and damage absorb voider that can also handle war shanks. Her voiding active skill lasts for 2 turns, which is pretty good on a 6-turn cooldown. Unfortunately, her stats and damage are very lacking, and so are her equips, but at least the fan could be used on Rimuru if you don't have the better alternatives with blue sub-attribute and BDP awakenings. As with Planar, when it comes to exchanging for Dorna, she might have some use, but be wary of which GFEs you're using as fodder. Dorna and the rest of the 9-star seasonals will get buffed soon to have 8 leading slots, but unfortunately, this buff will probably come after the SN3 title is over. Orihime&Hikoboshi is an exchangeable 3-unit system. Their cycling 5 to 1 cooldown active skill gives a team-wide damage cap to 6 billion, along with other buffs and a board change. Personally, this looks like a fun system, but it might not be worth the investment, as this requires 45 Pad Island units total, which is about 225 stones. Their leader skill scales with each combo, so you will be trying to maximize those. And since they have a low cooldown active skill, you can easily lead swap them into a 7x6 board. Their leader skill effective HP is a bit on the low side, but a full system already has 3 heal Ls, so you could try to stack them and run a looping shield to offset this. In SN3, their effective HP is not as bad, since this is a healer unit, but they will probably struggle in other dungeons without the healer buff. They'll get some sort of support later on with the new robot GFE Steed, who has 5.26 effective HP, so if you're interested in this system and that GFE, then you might be willing to exchange. For this unit, you either get none or 3 copies, since I think not a lot of people will be running this as a leader for you to pair with. But at the end of the day, if you're not swimming in Pad Island fodder, I would try to prioritize the ISIS exchange. Oichi is a mid-rarity cleric that serves as a 7x6 base and has a lot of utility awakenings. The 6-turn cooldown is a bit high for a cleric, but it gives 1 turn of Nail Orb Skyfall. Nail Orbs essentially reduce an enemy's HP by 1% of their total HP for each Nail Orb match at the end of damage calculation, similarly to follow-up attack effects. This might be useful on teams with low FUA damage to deal with the penultimate floor's 1% super resolves in SN2, SN3, and probably SN4. This does require 1 turn of setup, but if you're not gonna need the cleric effect anytime soon, this might be easier to pull off than making hard columns or boxes. Her being wood water doesn't really help much, since like always, wood teams are bad. And also, her board change isn't all that desirable. Still, this is a decent cleric, especially for some dungeons, and if you use any of her attributes in a team, since she can also help recover assists. Pastel is the new orb skin that is an amazing light T and BDP unit. She fits perfectly in Celclia teams since Pastel breaks her own and your leader's damage cap. Very useful with Celclia since they don't break their damage cap and they have a pretty high damage multiplier. Pastel's active skill also generates 9 heal orbs from non-lights, which requires you to have a dedicated life orb generator to actually deal damage. The best unit for this role is Susaku, so hopefully you have at least one copy of him. You could face 2 issues with Pastel's active skill. If you have too many lights, you won't generate enough heals to activate your leader skill damage reduction, and if you have too many heals, then you might be unable to deal any damage. Susaku's active skill would be a major help in the latter example, since his active skill overrides any non-light orbs. I have seen some teams with 2 Susakus and 2 Pastels, but that's a very expensive setup. The typical team usually has 2 Pastels, Ultraman Arc who was an orb skin, and Susaku and Celclia, so again, very expensive. I'm assuming a lot of people won't have much interest in this unit due to not having all of those other units, and it doesn't help that you need 2 Pastels, because even if you buy the bundle, you'll still need to roll another copy. I really wouldn't consider getting this bundle unless you free roll 1 copy and obviously have all those other units. Isis is the badge unit and therefore exchangeable for 15 Pad Island units or purchasable for $30. She has a lot of utility with her awakenings, but if I want to be nitpicky, she could have had more heal OEs. Her Evo active skill is great, since the first stage has a high cooldown haste effect, meaning you could put any equip to patch any holes in your team and disregard whatever that equip's active skill is. Obviously, you still have to be careful about overcharging once you move on to the active second stage, but since this final stage is on a 6-turn cooldown, you might not have that issue. In fact, you might face the issue of not having this active skill up in time, since 6 turns is a bit on the long side for a cleric active skill. Apart from having a cleric effect, Isis gives you a damage spike and a 75% damage reduction shield. These effects are nice, but they might not be useful most of the time. SN3 is on top of mind since the title is ongoing, so the shield could be very useful there. Floor 7 and 8 require a shield and a cleric, so if you have no other way of managing these floors, you'll have to stall for Isis so that you can use her active skill again. Both of her equips are great. The first one is great for the team HP and the 5 effective skill boosts, and it shines a bit more in SN3 since you can turn a unit into a healer and get the stat buffs from the dungeon. The second one is okay and might be poised to become better when we get the Killer Awakening buffs, as these will raise a unit's damage cap to 2x. So this is a very solid equip, even though the active skill might not be the best. It's great for all of the UN and SN bosses, since they are all dragons, but you still have to get through the rest of the dungeon enemies who might not be dragon type. We have a lot of dark units coming soon from JJK and Halloween, so these equips, and possibly even the unit, might see some use. If you have the fodder, I would get at least 1 copy. More would be great so you don't have to keep switching between the unit and her equips, but I wouldn't break the bank just to roll for trade fodder if you don't have it. Minaka is an older BGM unit, but the base form is a bit awkward to use, as her active skill is not a traditional cleric since it's missing the unmatchable recovery effect. She's meant to be using a blue TPA team, but outside of Rimuru or Bright Natural teams, there aren't that many places to use her, which is a bit sad because Minaka can deal some decent damage and bring some decent utility. Her equip is great to put on bulky non-healer units like Daijin Joe to bring into SN3. It doesn't grant that many effective skill boosts, and if you have Gino, you probably cleared the title already and don't really have a need for this equip. But overall, this equip brings a lot of bulk to the table. Her second equip is a lot less interesting though. While 3 TPAs on an equip will be the maximum amount after the TPA awakening buffs, there aren't that many teams or units in need of this equip. Minaka's Dark Evo is the main highlight for me. She has a decent amount of healing and damage potential. Her active skill is amazing to counter attribute and damage absorption shields that also comes with a 60% damage reduction shield, which is very useful for SN3, but that's not the only place where it's useful. If you have a team with low raw HP, since the shield effect lasts for 2 turns, you can use this to survive hits after undead animations. The Dark Fan equip has the same skill as the unit, but it's a bit less useful in this form. If you haven't bought or rolled a copy yet, I would be very tempted to get the bundle, since I don't see much value in rolling this seasonal this time around. Again, you might already have gotten the SN3 title without her first equip, or you might not have any interest in the Dark Evo. So if you're in that camp, she's an easy skip. So that's all of the REM units. Again, I wanted to keep this very short because this event is an easy skip unless you're one of the few Suzaku players that want to go into this machine for Pastel. But do let me know if you thought I overlooked an amazing or useful unit, and please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. To summarize, if you're able to, I would just exchange for Isis, maybe Fujin if you haven't gotten her, and Minaka might actually be worth the $30 if you like her light equip and her dark evo. The latter will see more use in Arc Versa teams and might be decent in some JJK, Halloween, or other dark teams. The JJK rerun overall looks pretty lackluster, so maybe there's less potential uses for Minaka. Also, JJK already has 2 absorption voiders, and these might be preferred over this Path Island unit. Minaka has more healing potential than those other units, and she also has a pretty decent 2-turn shield, but her 7-turn cooldown might become a bit long for upcoming dungeons, since I noticed that the JJK units have very short cooldowns. So again, I would skip Path Island and maybe go back into Code Geass for a chance at Gino if you haven't gotten a copy yet. As for other upcoming events, we have the Path C Super Gadfest, Monster Hunter, Sanrio, JJK, and hopefully Digimon. Path C will debut with Celclia, who's an amazing cleric, and may be as good as Kohaku or better depending on the team. That should be a 10-stone Super Gadfest, with Celclia and Arc Versa at 2.5%. But the current Super Gadfest in JP at the moment costs 12 magic stones and has these 2 units and other new GFEs at 5%. Even though I would like to get a Celclia ASAP, I'm not going to do any or only a few rolls in the Path C Super Gadfest, since that other Super Gadfest has amazing rates and only GFEs in its lineup. For Monster Hunter, I still think it's an easy skip, and I will be mainly exchanging for those 3 units I mentioned before. The Monster Hunter batch unit might have some uses with some of the Fire JJK units, but I don't have high hopes. Sanrio has some decent units, so it might be worth a few pulls, but I wouldn't go all out. As for JJK, I really did want this rerun to have some strong units, since I'm a fan of the series, but now that we have seen the full details, it doesn't seem like a strong REM. Most of my hopes and stones are now set aside for Digimon, but since this is a brand new collab, there is uncertainty on whether this will come to an A. Hopefully it does, and hopefully it's strong. Otherwise, I don't see anything else in the horizon that is on the same level as Code Geass. Let me know what your plans are, and good luck if you decide to roll. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.